Everyone has non-physical teachers. 5-sensory humans have them, but they're not aware of them. But we are not 5-sensory anymore. We are multisensory. And we can communicate with non-physical compassion and wisdom. This is the domain of non-physical existence, intelligence, non-physical reality. Reality means real, reality. What is a non-physical teacher? I didn't believe in any of this. I wasn't interested in any of this. And then came Ambrose, and my world changed. My world changed because I knew that so much of what I had dismissed as fantasy, as new age fluff, as people trying to impress with this thing called channeling, that some of those were real. And when they were real, they were bringing experiences and compassion and wisdom into the lives of those who were listening, and I was one. The very first things that Ambrose said captured my attention completely and permanently. I knew that I was in a new experience that I'd never had before, so I listened. I'm going to talk to you today about non-physical teachers. Everybody has them. And now that we're becoming multisensory, we're becoming aware of them. 5-sensory humans have non-physical teachers also, but they're not aware of them, and they're not able to communicate with them because of the limitations of their perceptions. But we are not 5-sensory anymore. We are multisensory. This is the great transformation of human consciousness, from consciousness that's limited to what the 5 senses can perceive, to a consciousness that does not have those limitations. And so as our awareness expands into new territory, you might say, although it's not like new territory over there, and the territory we're in is over here. Part of the new consciousness is realizing that there isn't any elsewhere. Where you are is. When you are is now. And you are always where you are now. Always. What does always mean? It means forever. What does forever mean? Well, you might say that's something having to do with eternity. But these are words that we have in our language, and most languages have words similar, but not the experience. No one who's 5-sensory has ever experienced anything eternal or infinite, and yet we have both those words in English, eternal and infinite. But they point to something more, and that something more is where non-physical teachers are, and your soul is in this more. Your soul's home is non-physical reality. When a personality dies, their soul returns to non-physical reality. The personality that they were is gone. It is no more, and it's not returning. But the energy that animated that personality has returned to its home, and that energy is still there. It's still real. For example, I love Linda, my spiritual partner, completely. And I love Linda, my spiritual partner, completely. Well, was that a redundant thing I just said? Yes, but there was a difference. Between the first and the second, Linda's personality died. Her soul returned home. But the energy that animated that soul no longer looks like Linda, because I can't imagine what it looks like. I don't know what a soul looks like, and I don't think it can be pictured graphically. But it can be felt, and you can feel it. And I feel Linda. So the energy that animated that beautiful incarnation of my Linda Francis' personality is still there, and it still loves me, and I still love it. This is the domain of non-physical existence, compassion, intelligence, non-physical reality. Reality means real, reality. Now, in this domain of awareness, put it that way, not elsewhere, but in this domain of awareness, exist intelligences of great compassion and wisdom. And these are what I'm referring to as non-physical teachers. I'm not talking about anyone who's in communication with something or something is being channeled through them. That varies a great deal in quality. I'm talking about non-physical teachers that I write with a capital T as opposed to a lowercase t. These teachers are real teachers in the sense that they have your well-being, your spiritual development most in their heart, in their minds, in their souls, although they don't have souls, hearts, or minds. They are. What is a non-physical teacher? Well, there are realms upon realms upon realms upon realms of existence in non-physical reality, about which I cannot speak. But I can speak about the small part of that wisdom and compassion that has come into my life. So I will say to you, as I say at the beginning of every event that I've done and that Linda and I have done together, I ask you that you not take as so anything that I say simply because I say it, but to see if you resonate with anything that I say. And if you do, then experiment with that. And if you like what that produces, experiment some more. And if you don't, let it go. Just let it go. This is a way that I've come to see life. It's a window through which I've come to look, and I offer it to you with the thought that it may be helpful to you also. There are so many ways to wisdom and to the heart. They are countless, and they all lead the same place, to love. How can they all lead the same place? Because none of them are separate from the universe, and the universe is separate from nothing, and the universe is love. So as you grow in awareness in your spiritual growth, you are moving toward what you already are, and what you already are is love. And many things that are wondrous. So now I come back to non-physical teachers with a capital T, as I have come to experience them, or at least the few that I have encountered, very few. The first time this happened to me, I want to share with you. I had just broken up with a person, a woman, that I liked a lot. And I'm going to give her the name, let's give her the name Margaret. That's not her name. Until that time, I had never had a relationship with a woman, just lots of sex. I was addicted to sex. I wasn't addicted to the women. I didn't care about the women. They were just my way of satisfying a sexual craving. I didn't care about them, and the women I was drawn to didn't care about me either. I didn't realize that until later. It really did affect my self-image when I realized that the women that I found that I was drawn to sexually, but not drawn to at all, were drawn to me sexually, but not drawn to me at all. We were both using each other. We were all using each other. It was a matter of predatory interaction. We were each the predator and the prey. P-R-E-Y. So I'm telling you this because Margaret was different. I really liked Margaret when I met her. And one of the things I liked about her was she liked sex a lot. But this was different from the other women that I was having sex with. I liked Margaret. There was a lightness between us. And we liked to do things like ride our bicycles and go on adventure trips. And then Margaret and I broke up. And I went into a tailspin, very much in pain and in loss, because I lost my friend. I lost my always willing, wonderful partner in sex. And I called a friend of mine, and actually he was an acquaintance that I met at one of his talks. His name was Robert Johnson. He was a Jungian psychologist, and he's written some books. Maybe you know of them in those days meaning in the 70s, maybe a little later. Books called He, She, We, and he was quite noted. And I explained what was happening to me, and he said, well, why don't you come on down here? He lived in San Diego, so I drove down to San Diego to be with him. I thought it was very generous of him. And when I got there, after 2 or 3 days of talking about my pain and my loss, he said, why don't you go into the desert and become enlightened? That's how it's usually done. He talked just like that. There's no social grace at all, just very laconic and direct. He said, we know an old woman. She has a house in the desert, and you can go there, and I'll arrange that for you. So I did. I drove into the desert, and the Anza Borrego Desert, east of San Diego. And it was in August, and it was hot. And I spent weeks there. And in that time in the desert, I had many experiences. I did not become enlightened, but I did have a lot of experiences. One of them was that, well, I don't know what enlightenment is, but if it's anything that's recognizable, I didn't recognize it. But I had these experiences. For example, I learned how to understand my dreams. And some of them were so important to me. I'm still using them. That was years ago. So before this happened, before I broke up with Margaret, I'd been invited to present at a conference in Sweden because I had written The Dancing Woolly Masters. It had been published by that time. It had won the American Book Award for Science and had been translated into several languages and a lot of European languages. But I couldn't go. I knew that I wasn't in a condition to travel, much less to present at a conference. But when I wanted to come out of the desert, I called Robert again and said, I'd like to leave this place. And he said, well, you can't come here. I've got guests. So that was like Robert, very direct. And so I went home to see my parents instead because I realized I loved my dad and I never liked him. So I spent 3 days with him and with my mother. And then I decided to go to Sweden. And we arrived there jet-lagged. I had 3 co-presenters at this conference. One of them was Edgar Mitchell, who was an Apollo 14 astronaut and was also one of the founders, or maybe the founder, of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, a pioneering organization into different ways of knowing. And then Peter Kostenbaum, who was a philosopher, and a third one. And we 4 were the presenters. And when we arrived at this hotel by car from the Stockholm airport, in the midst of the woods, an elegant little hotel in the midst of the woods, and there's lots of woods in Sweden, the conference organizer greeted us, and he said, I have a surprise for you. And he took us into a room, and this room had a channel and a translator who was his son. And the channel only spoke Swedish, and his son translated what he was saying. And the channel channeled this non-physical entity called Ambrose. And Ambrose didn't interest me. I was jet-lagged. We all were. I just wanted to get to my hotel room. But I listened, and then I went home. I went to my room. The next morning, Jan, the producer, came to me again and to the rest of us and said, you can talk to Ambrose anytime you want. I'll arrange that for you. I didn't know how many people in Sweden were waiting in line to talk to Ambrose. And as shallow as my experience with this entity had been, I decided that I would take Jan up on his offer because I was curious. So I went back to the room, and there was this channel and his son, the translator, and I. And we were the only ones. And then Ambrose. And I liked Ambrose this time immediately. But not liked. The very first things that Ambrose said captured my attention completely and permanently. He asked me, how did you learn to understand your dreams in the desert? Now, mind you, no one knew I was in a desert. Robert knew, but he didn't know what happened there. My parents didn't even know about a desert. But Ambrose knew, and he knew what happened. I knew that I was in a new experience that I'd never had before. So I listened. And Ambrose said, a light, a little flame has been ignited in you, and it's like a candle in a cathedral. And you need to keep it alive. And that alarmed me. I said, can it go out? And he said, yes, you could fall. How do I keep it alive? I asked. And he said, you need to speak to people. You need to want to speak to people. And I said, but Ambrose, that's what I can't do. And he held out his hands, and one hand grasped mine, and the other grasped my other hand. And he gripped me tightly, and he said, will you do that? Will you decide to speak to people? And I had to be feeling what I was feeling, and I had trepidation, I had fear, but at last I said, yes, I will do it. He squeezed my hand and smiled, and that was the end of our interview. The other thing I want to tell you about Ambrose is he was the most human presence I have experienced since. Nothing comes close. He was so human. I mean, it was like being with an old friend, completely safe. It was wonderful. That was my first experience with a non-physical teacher, and it couldn't have been better. I didn't have any expectations except those that were negative. I didn't believe in any of this. I wasn't interested in any of this. I had seen something on it about it on late night television once, but I had no interest in it at all. And then came Ambrose, and my world changed. My world changed because I knew that so much of what I had dismissed as fantasy, as New Age fluff, as hallucination, as people trying to impress other people with this thing called channeling, that some of those were real. And when they were real, they were bringing experiences and compassion and wisdom into the lives of those who were listening, and I was one by then. That's how I came to encounter non-physical reality for the first time, and my first non-physical teacher. Now, I've discovered since that everyone has non-physical teachers. 5 sensory humans have them, as I mentioned before, but they can't communicate with them like multisensory humans can because of the limitations of their perceptions, of their awareness. But we are not limited in the way that 5 sensory humans are. And we can communicate with non-physical compassion and wisdom. There's no one single way to do that. Some people can hear in words like I did and do, but that's not the only way. Some people hear, some people have sensations. Some people see sounds. Some people hear colors. And there's no one way that's better than the other. Having a personality in the Earth School means having a body and a mind and an intuitional structure, which is your way of communicating with intuition. Intuition is the voice of the non-physical world, and Ambrose was certainly in the non-physical world. What he told me has always helped me. If you're enjoying anything you're hearing on this podcast, subscribe to it. Now, what do I mean by enjoy? Do I mean, is it entertaining for you? Does it make you laugh? Does it make you forget your worries? That's not what I mean. I mean, do you resonate with anything that I say as relevant, profound, and pertinent for you, not for the world, for you? Something that you can use, something that you can experiment with in your life. If you do, if you resonate, then subscribe, because there's more where this comes from. It comes from the universe, as do you. I have a soul step for you. I want you to write down in your journal that you're carrying with you, in your back pocket of your jeans or in your purse, with a little pen or pencil that you're carrying with you. any times that you've had the experience of talking with what could be wisdom and compassion that's non-physical, or that you knew was wisdom and compassion and non-physical. What were those experiences? When did you first notice it? If you didn't know what it was, but you had the hunch that it was something more than your personality that you were accessing and that was accessing you, write those things down. Now, if you're doing all these soul steps that I'm suggesting to you, by now you have a collection of richness in that little journal, and you may need to have a bigger journal. It depends on how much richness and wisdom is coming to you. And I feel it's quite a bit. Now it's a matter of your awareness expanding to recognize it and use it. It's so good to be with you again. I'm looking forward to being with you again next time. I'm Gary Zukav.